I want you to react to this statement by a past guest on the show, Albert Einstein. Einstein said the following about two different dynamics of human capability. He called and this is from a book called The Metaphoric Mind by Bob Samples. He said, Albert Einstein called the intuitive or metaphoric mind a sacred gift. He added that the rational mind was a faithful servant. It is paradoxical that in the context of modern life, we have begun to worship the servant and to defile the divine.
Oh, I love it.
So do you see it possible to have both signs, the intuitive, metaphoric, the sacred gift, the divine, and the rational? Sorry, go ahead.
He had both. I mean, this is the interesting thing, right? Which is, what was it? Inspiration is more important than knowledge.
Imagination, like the Center for Human Imagination.
Right. The rational people are, great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. In order to make huge advances, you have to be wrong in the process. And what you find is you try to imagine E.E. Cummings turning in a poem and a copy editor saying, the capitalization is off, the punctuation is wrong, the grammar is non-existent. Yeah, no kidding, it's E.E. Cummings. Great minds have to be able to do things that are wrong. When Dirac, came up with his equation, he had numbers where A times B wasn't B times A. And it wasn't until he realized that they were matrices that he could make sense of what he'd written. If you can't go through wrong, you can't advance.
And thought the positron was the proton, right?
That's true.
And Galileo thought the tides were caused by the orbit of the Earth, not the moon.
So in all of these situations, you've got this sort of copy editing group that's always angry because it never wins. The answer is stop being a copy editor. You have to.
Is that why you think GU has experienced, kind of passions and opposition, or do you think it's people realize?
What are you saying about that? I haven't had almost any GU conversations. The question that you're trying to ask me is something like, "What's been the reaction to GU?" And what I'm telling you is, it's not what you're saying. The reaction is, I've lectured in two places because of COVID, one in Marseille in France and the other University of Chicago at the Kadanoff Center. I've had perfectly polite conversations. People are interested in various aspects. But the academic incentive structure, the ability to be viable, means that you've got to ally yourself with people who can fund you and who can hire you and who can give you tenure. And everyone's worried about their reputation and nobody's worried about physics.
But all the people
when I say nobody, I don't mean absolutely nobody. I had a great conversation with, for example, Nima Arkani Hamed recently.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're right. What was his reaction then? I mean, was he willing to engage it, or was it polite?
Of course. He's very constructive. His point is, I learned a great deal from Nima. And Nima isn't like, let me just say it. Nima, in my estimation, is the soul of theoretical physics right now, because he has an ability to do something that I think almost no one else does, which is dead reckoning. We've lost sort of the compass heading from experiment because the energy levels have gotten prohibitive for new phenomena. We failed for a great deal of time, so most people are demoralized. Theoretical physics lives, even when Nima and I disagree or he says something that's critical of me, that's what real critique is. And what he told me to do is, hey, here are the sorts of things that you can grab the attention of the quantum field theory community. Now, I learned something very, very important, which I would love to discuss on the show. I think one of the big problems is that there are these three legs to the mathematical stool, which is geometry, algebra, and analysis, i.e. calculus. The problem with quantum field theory is that it grew up unbalanced. It's really almost all analysis, and then we found out very late in the day that we'd been neglecting certain topological, geometric, and algebraic things, and sort of starting in the 70s with Jim Simons for the last 50 years, People like Ed Witten, Graham Siegel, Dan Quillen, Luis Alvarez Gaumet have been making quantum field theory geometric. And that's been the basic vector of success in the field. But what you come to understand is that analysis is too brutal and crude of a tool to have this responsibility for carrying physics forward. And I'll give a simple example. If you have a function, like a little lump of probability that represents where a particle can be, and then you try to propagate that function, how do you know that the propagation of that function isn't going to turn the function negative in some places? Or how do you know that the function as a lump isn't going to start moving faster than light and screw up causality? Or how do you know that the integral of the probability under that function is going to remain 1.00? So none of those things are really natural inside of analysis, but it seems like the geometry and the deeper algebraic principles ensure that all of those things are true. And this goes back to something that, Esther Perel once said to me, the great relationship coach and therapist. And she said, the thing about masculinity is that it is incredibly powerful and just as fragile. In other words, a masculine male is an incredibly powerful person who can be damaged by a single stray comment, from a woman and cut low and cut to the quick. That situation is true in quantum field theory, which is it's incredibly powerful, but it is just as fragile.